Hey everyone, figured I'd finally spill this. It's been eating me alive for years. I'm using a throwaway because, well, you'll see. This isn't some Reddit rage bait, I promise. This is my life. Or what's left of it after a nuclear bomb went off in the middle of my perfect little world. I'm Arthur, 34. I was happily married, gainfully employed, and living the suburban dream. Now? Let's just say I've learned that dreams can turn into nightmares faster than you can say stock option. I was the stereotypical computer science nerd, the guy glued to his monitor, fueled by caffeine and the burning desire to build something. State school grad, nothing fancy. Landed a job right out of college at a tiny tech startup. Think cloud security. The pay sucked initially, $65K in a ridiculously expensive city, but they offered stock options, the kind that make you believe in lottery tickets. The founders weren't your typical VC-funded charlatans. They actually had a vision. I took the gamble. That's where I met Evelyn, not her real name. Gotta protect the innocent. Or not so innocent in this case. It was straight out of a rom-com. I was practically sleepwalking through the local coffee shop, running on fumes after a brutal all-nighter deployment, and I managed to spill my entire latte directly onto her brand new MacBook. I felt like the biggest moron on the planet. She was surprisingly calm. I offered to buy her a new one, maxed out my credit cards in the process, but she insisted on just letting me get it fixed. Then we ended up grabbing drinks, then dating. Evelyn was a dental hygienist, sharp as a tack, hilarious, and, let's be honest, way out of my league looks-wise. But we clicked. She actually listened when I started droning on about coding, and I was hooked on her insane stories about the dental world, the patients, the drama, the sheer weirdness of it all. 2 years later, we got married. Small ceremony, her parents' backyard. Used most of our savings for a down payment on a starter home in the suburbs. The commute was brutal, 45 minutes each way, but the schools were good, and we were planning for the future. Kids followed quickly. Lily in 2016, Max in 2019. Those first few years were a blur of sleep deprivation, diaper changes, and the constant struggle to balance a demanding startup job with being a decent dad. Some days, I literally couldn't remember if I'd showered, but Evelyn was a superhero. She cut back her hours at the dentist so she could be home more. We made it work. The startup was inching its way forward. We went from 5 guys in a WeWork to about 50 people in a real office. I got promoted to lead developer, then engineering manager. The stock options kept vesting. I had about 200,000 shares, valued at 50 cents each. I honestly figured they'd end up worthless, like most startup stock. But I held on. Hope, you know? We had a good life. Nice neighborhood, decent schools, the occasional family vacation to Disney. Nothing extravagant, but the kids loved it. Cool neighbors, young families, block parties in the summer. The whole damn suburban fantasy. Evelyn made friends with the other moms. I'd grab beers with some of the dads while our kids had playdates. Normal. Boring. Happy. Then the wrecking ball arrived, Miles and Bianca. They moved in next door in 2021. That's where everything started to unravel. Miles. God, just thinking about him makes my blood boil. He was this specimen, a walking, talking, posing, preening fitness influencer. The kind who documents every single rep, every single protein shake, every single flex in the mirror. His garage was a CrossFit temple. He was always working on his brand, super friendly at first, offering to help with house projects, loaning tools, the whole bit. Bianca, his wife, worked insane hours at some corporate law firm in the city. So, Miles was home a lot, building his brand. In retrospect, the red flags were waving like a damn parade. But when you're pulling 50, 60-hour weeks at a startup, trying to stay afloat during a pandemic, and simultaneously battling the toddler apocalypse, you miss things. Or maybe you see them, but you just don't want to believe it. Evelyn started working out at Miles's garage gym. Said she wanted to get back in shape after the kids. Started wearing makeup to work out. Who does that? She'd come back all giddy. Energized? I actually thought it was good at first. She seemed happier. Had more pep. God, I was so freaking naive. Miles, in his infinite wisdom and perfectly sculpted torso, was always around. At first, it was just little things. I'd come home from work, and he'd be helping Evelyn move furniture, or fixing something in the backyard. Shirtless, of course, because apparently, shirts are optional when you have a six-pack that can grate cheese. I was drowning in work. We were trying to close this massive deal with a major tech company. I'm talking FAANG level. Insane security features to build, impossible deadlines. Some weeks I was clocking 14-hour days. I barely saw the kids except on weekends. Evelyn seemed understanding, initially, but then the comments started. Miles says you should make time for family. Miles thinks it's important to have work-life balance. You know, Miles manages to run his business and stay in shape. Cool story, Evelyn, but Miles's business is posting gym selfies on Instagram while my job actually pays the mortgage. Then she got really into fitness. Like, obsessively so. Our grocery bill doubled. Everything had to be organic, grass-fed, free-range, sustainably sourced, you name it. She started buying all these ridiculously expensive supplements that Miles recommended. Our kitchen looked like a GNC had thrown up in it. Her workout schedule became odd. It used to be 3 times a week, at normal hours. Then it was every day, always when I was at work or with the kids. She'd come back all flushed and happy, hair wet from showering at the gym, wearing makeup to work out. Who the hell does that? She bought all this expensive Lululemon gear. Apparently, her old Target leggings weren't good enough anymore. But the really weird stuff started with her phone. Evelyn was never a tech person. She'd leave her phone in random places and not even notice. Suddenly, she was glued to it 24/7. Always texting, always with the screen tilted away from me. She got a new password and wouldn't tell me what it was. We used to know each other's passwords, not because we snooped, but just in case of emergencies with the kids. And the worst part? She started getting super aggressive about everything. I'd ask what she wanted for dinner, and she'd snap at me, saying I never help with meal planning. I'd try to talk about my day at work, and she'd roll her eyes and say not everything is about my precious startup, a total Jekyll and Hyde transformation. One day, I was playing with Max in the backyard and saw Miles spotting Evelyn during some kind of workout through their garage window. Dude was literally pressed up against her, helping with her form or whatever. Max waved and said, "Mommy and Miles are best friends." "Yeah, buddy. I bet they are." I tried talking to her about it. Told her I was feeling weird about how much time she was spending over there. Big mistake. She absolutely flipped out. Started screaming about how I was controlling and jealous. How I was trying to stop her from having friends. How I was never home anyway, so why did I care? Then she started picking fights about money. The startup wasn't paying great. We were still in the growth phase, but we were comfortable. Suddenly, nothing was enough. She wanted to renovate the kitchen. Needed a new car. Wanted to send Lily to some fancy private school. When I explained about startup salary versus stock options, she'd get this look on her face, like I was speaking Klingon. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. Started noticing weird charges on our credit card. Fancy restaurants I never went to. Hotel charges in our own city. Who needs a hotel 20 minutes from home? Some lingerie place I definitely never saw her wear anything from. The kids started acting different, too. Lily, 8, went from being this happy, chatty kid to super quiet. Max, 5, got clingy. Would cry whenever I left for work. Once, I caught him talking to his stuffed animals about how Mommy and Miles are having a sleepover while Daddy works. Yeah. That hit like a truck. One night, I came home early because our deployment got delayed. The house was dark, but Evelyn's car was in the driveway. I heard music coming from Miles's garage gym. Walked over, thinking maybe I should try to clear the air. Talk man to man. Yeah? That was not what I found. I won't go into details. But let's just say Evelyn's workout routine definitely wasn't focused on fitness. Bianca, Miles's wife, was working late at her law firm, like usual. I didn't confront them then. Just took a video on my phone and went back home. Sat in my car for an hour, just processing. Called in sick the next day. Talked to a lawyer. He told me to act normal, gather evidence, don't let them know I knew. Hardest week of my life. Pretending everything was fine while they were literally doing their thing next door. I had the video of Evelyn and Miles's workout session saved in about 6 different places. I was going to confront Evelyn that weekend, when my parents could take the kids. I had it all planned out. Divorce papers ready. Evidence documented. Everything. But Evelyn and Miles had their own plan, and they moved first. It was a regular Tuesday. I was at work, knee-deep in code reviews, when my team lead messaged me to come to HR. Weird, but not totally unusual, given all the Amazon acquisition talks that were happening. I walked in and there were 2 cops waiting. Turns out, Evelyn had gone to the police that morning with bruises, claiming I'd beaten her during an argument about money. According to her, I'd lost control when she confronted me about spending too much time at work. She even had pictures of bruises on her arms and face. The cops arrested me right there in the office. Most humiliating moment of my life. Getting handcuffed in front of all my coworkers. Spent 48 hours in jail before my brother could post bail. Lost my phone. No access to my work laptop, company policy with arrests. Couldn't go home because of the emergency restraining order Evelyn filed. Had to sleep on my brother's couch while wearing an ankle monitor like some kind of criminal. The company put me on administrative leave. Their nice way of saying, "You're fired, but we'll wait for the PR nightmare to die down first." 15 years of clean record. Never even had a parking ticket. And suddenly, I'm a domestic abuser. My face was in the local news. Local tech executive arrested for domestic violence. Yeah, that went great with potential employers. Here's the really messed up part. Evelyn and Miles had planned this for weeks. Found out later they'd been documenting every argument we had, aka normal conversations they twisted. Taking pictures anytime Evelyn bumped into something and got a bruise, she's clumsy. AF always has been. Building this whole fake history of abuse. They even got some of the other neighborhood moms involved. Suddenly, these women I'd had BBQs with, whose kids had birthday parties at our house, were writing statements about how they'd always suspected I was abusive, how they'd heard arguing from our house. Yeah, because Evelyn was screaming about CrossFit at 6:00 a.m. One even claimed she saw me grab Evelyn's arm aggressively while getting groceries from the car. I was helping her carry bags because she'd sprained her wrist doing whatever with Miles. The worst part? CPS got involved. Evelyn got emergency custody of the kids. I went from seeing my children every day to being allowed supervised visits for 2 hours every other weekend. Do you know how messed up it is to have to see your own kids in some depressing government building while some social worker takes notes about every interaction? Had to cash out some of my stock options just to afford a lawyer. Company bylaws said I could keep the rest as long as I'd been there over 5 years. Thank God for small mercies, I guess. Moved into this depressing studio apartment near my brother's place because it was all I could afford with legal bills and child support payments. Lily wouldn't even look at me during visits. Found out Evelyn had told her I was sick in the head and needed to get better before I could come home. Max would just cry and ask why I didn't love them anymore. Try explaining domestic violence allegations to a 5-year-old. Actually, don't, because it's impossible. Lost most of my friends too. Funny how people disappear when you're accused of something like this. The few who stuck around were mostly guys from work who'd seen how much I'd sacrificed for my family. They knew the real story, but their hands were tied with the legal stuff going on. Meanwhile, Miles and Evelyn weren't even trying to hide it anymore. He'd moved out of his house with Bianca, who apparently had her own hell to deal with once she found out about everything. They were posting gym selfies together, going to restaurants, acting like they were the perfect couple, using my child support money to fund their little love story. I had to start driving Uber on weekends just to make ends meet. Went from leading engineering teams to picking up drunk college kids at 2 a.m. The irony? Some of my passengers were interns at my old company. Try keeping it together when some 22-year-old is talking about the amazing project you got fired from. Remember those stock options I mentioned? The ones I had to partially cash out to pay for lawyers? Yeah, this is where it gets wild. But first, let me paint you a picture of rock bottom. I was living in this 400-square-foot studio apartment that smelled like the previous tenant's 50 cats had a party. Working 2 jobs, junior dev at some corporate hellhole during the day, the only place that would hire me with the DV charges pending, and Uber driver at night. Eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches to afford child support. Still had about 200,000 shares of my old company's stock that I couldn't sell due to lockup periods. The startup was doing okay. Not great, but surviving. We had this security software that helped companies manage their cloud infrastructure. Boring tech stuff, I know. Amazon Web Services had been sniffing around for a while, but nothing serious. Then Log4j happened. For the non-tech folks, imagine someone found a way to break into basically every company's computer system through a tiny hole. Nobody noticed. That's Log4j. Our software happened to be really good at finding and fixing that hole. Right place, right time. One random Tuesday, I'm checking my phone between Uber rides and see like 50 missed calls. The startup's getting acquired by AWS. Stocks going from $4 to $247 per share in the buyout. I did the math like 20 times because I thought I was hallucinating. 200,000 shares times $247 equals $49.4 million. Before taxes, first thing I did? Threw up. Second thing? Called my lawyer. Third thing? Threw up again. Here's where it gets fun. The acquisition news made local headlines. Local tech startup acquired by Amazon for $2.1 billion. My name was buried in there somewhere as one of the early employees. Guess who reads local tech news? Evelyn's lawyer. Within 24 hours, I get this email from Evelyn. First one since the arrest. All sweet and concerned, like we're still best friends or something. Hey! Hope you're doing well. Been thinking about our situation. Maybe we should talk about what's best for the kids? Translation, I heard you're rich now. Let me get my claws in. I didn't respond. Just took a screenshot and sent it to my lawyer. Then went back to my Uber shift. Needed to keep appearances normal while everything finalized. The acquisition would take 3 months to close, and I didn't want Evelyn causing problems before then. But Evelyn wasn't done. Next day, Miles is at my regular coffee shop. Totally coincidental, right? Tries to act all buddy-buddy. Hey, man! Water under the bridge. We all make mistakes. Evelyn's really sorry about everything. Yeah, sorry she accused me of beating her, got me arrested, took my kids, and ruined my reputation. But now that I'm worth millions, let's be friends. Such a convenient change of heart. I kept driving Uber right up until the acquisition closed. The looks on passengers' faces when they'd recognize me from the news articles? Priceless. Aren't you that guy who? Yep, that's me. Your millionaire Uber driver. The day the money hit my account was surreal. After taxes and fees, I ended up with about $28 million. First thing I did? Bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a gated community. Nothing flashy, but it had good security and was in the kids' school district. Set up college funds for Lily and Max, $2 million each in trust. They can't touch it until they're 25. Started a small software consulting business, mostly to keep busy and have a legit income source that wasn't surprise AWS acquisition. Hired a few of my old teammates who'd stuck by me through everything. Then Evelyn made her move. Got served with papers at my new house. She wanted half the acquisition money, claiming we were still technically married when the stock value increased, plus back child support calculated on my new net worth and primary custody because, obviously, a violent abuser shouldn't have millions to spend on kids. The irony? If she hadn't set me up, hadn't gotten me arrested and forced me to cash out some shares early, she might have had a case for half. But there's this funny thing about documented domestic violence accusations. She showed up at my new house on a Sunday morning. Hadn't seen her in person since the court dates, looking all sad in this modest Target outfit. Quite a change from her usual Lululemon everything. Barely any makeup. Eyes all puffy, like she'd been crying. "Can we talk?" she asked. Like we're in some Lifetime movie. It's about the kids. It's always about the kids with her. Funny how they weren't her priority when she was busy destroying their dad's life. But I let her in. Had security cameras everywhere and my phone recording in my pocket. Trust issues? Nah! Just experience. She sits there in my living room, crying about how Miles had manipulated her. Apparently, he'd convinced her I was cheating projection much. Said I was going to leave her broke and take the kids. Rich, coming from the guy who literally helped frame me for abuse. He was so controlling, she sobbed. He made me file those charges. I was scared and confused. Sure, Evelyn. Those bruises just appeared magically, and those witness statements wrote themselves. Then comes the real kicker. I know I messed up, but I'm still legally your wife. The stock value increased while we were married. I deserve half. For the kids. This woman had me arrested, took my kids, nearly ruined my career, and now wants half my money. The audacity is actually impressive. The kids miss you, she continues, watching my reaction. We could be a family again. Start fresh. Yeah, because nothing says fresh start like false domestic violence charges. She'd clearly practiced this speech, talked about how she'd gone to therapy, doubt it, how she'd realized her mistakes, sure, how Miles had been the real abuser, ironic, even brought up our first date at that coffee shop, like memory lane was going to make me forget everything. The whole time she's talking, my phone's blowing up. Turns out she told her lawyer she was attempting reconciliation, trying to establish some narrative about us working things out when the money hit. Then she starts with the waterworks about how hard things have been, living in a small apartment, karma's extra shifts at the dental office, oh no, actual work, can barely afford the kids' activities. Maybe stop buying $200 leggings? I never wanted any of this, she says. Miles made me think you were this monster, but now I see he was the real monster. Right. Because Miles forced her to, 1, cheat for months, 2, plan elaborate abuse accusations, 3, get me arrested at work, 4, take my kids, 5, spend my child support on gym gear, 6, lie to everyone we knew. But here's the best part. She pulls out her phone, shows me pictures of the kids. Recent ones. I hadn't seen them in months. Lily at her dance recital. Max playing soccer. All the moments I'd missed. They need their dad, she says. We can fix this. Translation, I'm broke, you're rich. Let's pretend I didn't completely screw up your life. Then, she drops the bomb. I've talked to my lawyer. If we can't work this out, well, I have rights. The stock value increased during our marriage. And with your history of domestic violence. Ah, there it is. The threat behind the tears. Classic Evelyn. I let her finish her performance. Even offered her some tissues. The cheap, rough ones, not the fancy, soft kind. Then I just said, I'll have my lawyer contact yours, and showed her out. The second she left, I called my lawyer. Turns out Evelyn had been busy. Filed for emergency spousal support based on the acquisition money. Tried to modify the custody agreement. claiming my newfound wealth made me a flight risk. Even reached out to some of my old coworkers, looking for dirt. The real comedy? She's still posting inspirational quotes on Instagram about rising above negativity and finding your truth. Between those and gym selfies with her new trainer, guess Miles got replaced. You guys aren't going to believe what happened in court. Remember those security cameras I mentioned? Yeah, they're about to become very important. The court date was set for last month. Evelyn shows up looking like she raided the Salvation Army. Plain dress, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. Real struggling single mom vibes. Even had the kids with her against court orders. BTW sitting in the front row like props in her little show. Her lawyer goes first. Dude's wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. Starts painting this picture of Evelyn as this devoted wife who supported her husband through his tech career and sacrificed her own ambitions to raise our kids. Claims she deserves half the acquisition money because her emotional support was crucial to the company's success. Yeah, such great emotional support. Nothing says I believe in you like false DV charges. Then they bring up the domestic violence stuff again. Try spinning it like I'm the volatile tech bro who got lucky with stocks and might flee the country with my millions. Even had the balls to suggest I might be dangerous now that I have unlimited resources. My lawyer, Greg, absolute legend, just sits there taking notes, looking bored. Evelyn keeps shooting me these little worried looks, probably wondering why we're not freaking out about their story. Then it's our turn? Greg stands up, straightens his tie, and says, Your Honor, before we begin our defense, I'd like to present some new evidence that's recently come to light. Cue the security camera footage from my house. See? Evelyn didn't just visit once with her fake reconciliation act. She'd been coming by almost every day when I was at my office, trying to get in. And guess who was with her half the time? Miles. The cameras caught them planning the whole thing. Evelyn and Miles sitting in his car outside my house, literally rehearsing her emotional speech. Caught her planting some fake evidence in my mailbox, letters she'd written to herself about being afraid of me, dated before the DV charges. Even got them laughing about how easy it would be to take half my money. But wait, there's more. Remember those bruises she used to frame me? Turns out my Ring doorbell caught her and Miles staging those too, back when they were still neighbors. Video shows them using makeup to create fake bruises, taking photos, even practicing her scared wife face. The judge's face during all this? Priceless. Evelyn looked like she was going to throw up. Miles, who got subpoenaed to appear, kept trying to leave, but the bailiff made him stay. Then Greg drops the nuclear bomb. Turns out Evelyn and Miles had been trying to pull similar scams with other people. Found 2 other guys in different cities, both successful tech workers, both falsely accused of abuse, both got taken to the cleaners in divorce settlements. Evelyn and Miles had it down to a science. The real MVP? Bianca, Miles's ex-wife. She's a lawyer herself and had been building a case against them for months. Came to court with a whole file of evidence, texts, emails, bank records, showing how they'd split their previous scam money. By the time Greg was done, Evelyn's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Started backpedaling so fast, I thought he'd fall over. Your Honor, my client may have been confused about certain events. The judge wasn't having any of it. Called a recess. Came back an hour later looking pissed as hell. Threw out Evelyn's claim for the stock money, ordered her to pay my legal fees, and referred the whole case to the day for potential fraud charges. But the best part? The custody modification judge took one look at those videos of Evelyn and Miles plotting to scam me and ordered an emergency custody evaluation. The kids are with me now while Evelyn gets investigated for perjury and fraud. Oh, and Miles? Dude tried to run as soon as court ended. Literally sprinted for the parking lot. Got caught by Bianca's new boyfriend, who happens to be a cop. Talk about karma. First off, Evelyn and Miles got arrested. Turns out running multiple fraud schemes across state lines is federal territory. The FBI's been building a case against them for weeks. They found 3 other victims besides me, all tech guys, all got hit with false DV charges, all lost everything in rigged divorces. Evelyn and Miles had their scam down to a science. The kids are with me full time now. Not going to lie, it's been rough. 2 traumatized kids, plus 1 dad learning how to be a full-time parent, equals some serious chaos. First week, I burned dinner 3 times, sent Lily to school with mismatched shoes, and completely forgot about Max's show until day. But we're figuring it out. Hired a child psychologist who specializes in parental alienation cases. Doctor, Sarah not sharing her full name is amazing with the kids. Lily finally opened up about how Evelyn and Miles coached her to say she was scared of me. Max had been told I didn't want to see them anymore because I loved money more than them. Who does that to their own kids? The house thing worked out better than expected. Moved us to a nice neighborhood with good schools, but nothing flashy. Got a gaming room for Max kids obsessed with Minecraft. And let Lily design her own bedroom, currently very pink. Security system that would make Fort Knox jealous, but it helps them feel safe. Started working from home, full time. My consulting company's doing well, but the kids come first now. Got a solid team handling most projects while I focus on being dad. Funny how life works. Spent years chasing success in tech, and now my biggest achievement is making Max laugh at my terrible dad jokes. Evelyn's facing 15 to 20 years for fraud, perjury, and some other charges I don't fully understand. Her lawyer tried to cut a deal, but the feds aren't playing. Turns out, they really don't like organized fraud schemes targeting tech workers. Who knew? Miles rolled on Evelyn the second things got serious. Dude literally cried in FBI custody, claimed she was the mastermind, probably true, and he was just a victim of her manipulation, definitely BS. He's still looking at 10 years minimum. Bianca, Miles's ex, has been surprisingly awesome through all this. She's helping the feds build their case and has been great with the kids. They remember her from when we were neighbors, and she comes over sometimes to bake cookies with them. No drama. Just genuine care for 2 kids who've been through hell. The money stuff sorted itself out. Set up proper trusts for the kids, invested in some boring but stable stuff my financial advisor recommended, and started a foundation helping fathers fighting false DV charges. The foundation's already helped 3 dads get their kids back. Dating? Yeah, that's a hard no right now. Trust issues aside, I'm not bringing anyone new into my kids' lives until they're ready. They've dealt with enough adult drama for a lifetime. Some unexpected good came from all this, though. Remember my old company, the one that fired me after the DV charges? Their CEO called personally to apologize, offered me a consulting gig. Declined, but they wrote a public letter clearing my name. Didn't need it anymore, but it meant something. Lily is doing better in school now. Her teachers say she's smiling again, participating in class. She's joining the science club next semester. Turns out she's got her dad's nerd genes after all. Max is still Max. Endless energy and a heart too big for his body. He's decided he wants to be a computer game maker who helps people when he grows up. The neighbor who wrote that false statement against me came by last week to apologize. Said Evelyn had convinced her I was dangerous. Showed her fake evidence. We're not going to be friends, but it's one less person looking at me like I'm a monster. Some days are still hard. The kids have nightmares sometimes. Lily gets anxious when I'm out of sight too long. Max asks at least once a week if I'm sure I want them living with me. But we're healing, taking it one day at a time. It's been almost 6 months since Evelyn and Miles were taken into custody. 6 months since the world tilted back onto its axis, or at least as close to normal as it's going to get. The legal proceedings are glacial. A slow, agonizing crawl through a system that's supposed to deliver justice, but feels more like a prolonged torture. Evelyn's lawyer, bless his rapidly diminishing career prospects, is still trying to negotiate a plea deal, something that would keep her out of federal prison in exchange for Well, for basically admitting to ruining several lives and defrauding innocent people. The feds aren't budging. They want blood. And honestly, so do I. But the legal drama is background noise compared to the real struggle, helping my kids heal. Lily, bless her heart, is a resilient little firecracker. She's back to her chatty self, excelling in school, and, much to my chagrin, developing a terrifying fondness for TikTok dances. But the scars are there, hidden beneath the surface. She still has nightmares, wakes up screaming for Evelyn, then immediately regrets it, burying her face in her pillow and whispering, "I didn't mean it, Daddy." I promise, the guilt is crushing. I try to reassure her, tell her it's okay to miss her mother, even after everything. It's a complicated emotion, grief mixed with betrayal, and I'm not sure I'm equipped to navigate it, let alone help her. Max is different. He internalizes everything. He's quiet, watchful, and still clings to me like a barnacle to a ship. He used to be a whirlwind of boundless energy, a tiny tornado tearing through the house. Now? He mostly sits in his Minecraft world, building elaborate fortresses, pixelated versions of the safe haven he craves in real life. Doctor! Sarah is a godsend. She's patient, insightful, and has this uncanny ability to cut through the noise and get to the heart of what the kids are feeling. She's teaching me how to be a better parent, how to listen without judgment, how to validate their emotions, even when those emotions are painful and confusing. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I found Max huddled in the hallway outside Lily's room. He was clutching his favorite stuffed animal, a raggedy old bear named Captain Snuggles. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, crouching down beside him. "What's wrong?" He looked up at me with those big, sad eyes. "Lily's crying," he said, his voice barely audible. "She's dreaming about Mommy again." "Yeah," I said, running a hand through his hair. "Sometimes it's hard to stop the bad dreams." "Will she ever stop crying?" he asked. "Will she ever be happy again?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Yes, Max," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "She will be happy again. It might take a while, but we'll get there. Together." He leaned into me, burying his face in my chest. "Promise?" "I promise," I said, holding him tight. But even as I spoke the words, I wondered if I could keep that promise. I wondered if any of us could ever truly be happy again, not with the ghosts of yesterday still clinging to us. The calls from the FBI continue. They're piecing together the details of Evelyn's and Miles's operation, trying to understand the scope of their deception. They've uncovered more victims, more families torn apart by their greed and manipulation. The sheer scale of it is sickening. Bianca, Miles's ex-wife, is still helping with the investigation. She's become an unexpected ally, a source of strength and support. She understands what I'm going through, the anger, the betrayal, the constant fear that it could all happen again. We meet for coffee occasionally, share stories, offer each other words of encouragement. It's a strange friendship, born out of shared trauma, but I'm grateful for it. One day, Bianca called me, her voice tight with suppressed anger. "They're trying to pin it all on Miles," she said. "Evelyn is claiming she was just a pawn, that he manipulated her into doing everything." "I'm not surprised," I said, my jaw clenching. "She's always been good at playing the victim. The feds aren't buying it," Bianca said. "They know she was just as involved, just as culpable. But they're worried about getting a conviction if they can't prove her intent." "What can I do?" I asked. "Just keep telling your story," she said. "Keep reminding them what she did to you, to your kids. Don't let them forget." I knew she was right. I couldn't let them forget. I owed it to Lily and Max, to the other victims, to myself. But reliving the past is agonizing. Every memory, every detail, is like a shard of glass, piercing my heart. The trust, the love, the promises, all shattered into a million pieces. I try to focus on the future, on building a new life for my kids, a life filled with love, security, and laughter. We take weekend trips to the beach, go hiking in the mountains, have movie nights with mountains of popcorn. I'm learning to braid Lily's hair badly, helping Max build his Minecraft castles, and even attempting to cook something other than grilled cheese sandwiches. But the shadows are always there, lurking in the corners of my mind, whispering doubts and fears. Will the kids ever truly trust me again? Will I ever be able to trust anyone? And the biggest question of all, will Evelyn ever truly face the consequences of her actions? Or will she somehow manage to weasel her way out of it, leaving a trail of devastation in her wake? The answer, I fear, is still a long way off. A few weeks ago, something unsettling happened. Something that shook my fragile sense of normalcy and reminded me that Evelyn, even locked away, could still reach out and touch my life. Or, more accurately, the lives of my children. It started with a letter, a plain, white envelope addressed to Lily in shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. It arrived in the regular mail, buried among the bills and junk mail. I almost didn't notice it, but something about the way it was addressed caught my eye. The handwriting looked deliberately childish, as if someone was trying to mimic a child's script. And the return address was simply a friend. My instincts screamed danger. I waited until the kids were asleep, then carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded in half. The handwriting was even more unsettling up close. The letters were uneven, almost spidery, and the words were misspelled in a way that felt contrived. It read, "Dearest Lily, I hope you are having a good time. I miss you very much and think about you all the time. Mommy is sorry she can't be with you right now, but she loves you very, very much. Don't forget Mommy. Remember all the fun things we did together. She will see you again soon. Love, a friend." My blood ran cold. Every alarm bell in my head was ringing. This wasn't just some well-meaning relative or friend trying to reach out. This was calculated, deliberate, designed to manipulate and undermine my efforts to help Lily heal. Who would do this? Who would write such a letter? Evelyn, obviously. But how? She was in jail, under constant supervision. How could she possibly orchestrate something like this? My first thought was Miles. Maybe he was acting as her proxy, sending the letter on her behalf. But Miles was even more tightly controlled than Evelyn. He had a mountain of charges against him and was desperate to cut a deal with the feds. Risking more trouble by helping Evelyn seemed unlikely, even for him. Then who? A family member? A friend? Someone Evelyn had manipulated into doing her bidding? The possibilities were endless, and each one was more terrifying than the last. I called Greg, my lawyer. He was as disturbed as I was. He promised to look into it, to contact the authorities and try to track down the source of the letter. But I couldn't wait. I had to do something. I had to protect my children. I started by questioning Lily, gently, carefully, trying not to alarm her. Had she received any letters lately? Had anyone talked to her about her mother? She shook her head, her eyes wide with confusion. "No, Daddy." "Why?" I showed her the letter. She looked at it, her brow furrowed. "I don't know who sent this," she said. "The handwriting is weird, and Mommy doesn't spell things wrong." That was a small comfort, but it didn't ease my fears. I decided to be more proactive. I contacted the school, alerted them to the situation, and asked them to keep a close eye on Lily. I also reached out to the parents of Lily's friends, asking them to let me know if they heard anything or noticed anything unusual. I felt like I was spiraling, becoming paranoid, seeing threats everywhere. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this letter was just the beginning, that Evelyn was planning something bigger, something more devastating. I installed more security cameras around the house, upgraded the alarm system, and even started carrying a concealed weapon legally, of course. I knew it was probably overkill, but I couldn't take any chances. I was determined to protect my children, no matter what, even if it meant turning my life into a fortress. The days that followed were filled with anxiety and uncertainty. I jumped at every unexpected phone call, scrutinized every unfamiliar face, and obsessed over every detail of Lily and Max's lives. I was living in a constant state of hypervigilance, waiting for the other shoe to drop. One afternoon, while picking Lily up from school, I noticed a woman standing across the street, watching us. She was middle-aged, dressed in plain clothes, and had a vacant, almost unsettling expression on her face. I stared back at her, trying to gauge her intentions. She didn't seem threatening, but there was something about her that made my skin crawl. As I buckled Lily into the car, the woman started to cross the street. My heart pounded in my chest. "Lily, stay here," I said, my voice tight. I got out of the car and walked towards the woman, my hand instinctively reaching for the weapon concealed beneath my jacket. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice low and menacing. The woman stopped, her eyes widening slightly. I just wanted to say, "You have beautiful children." Her voice was soft, almost childlike, and her words, so innocent, so unexpected, caught me completely off guard. "Thank you," I said, my grip loosening on the weapon. "But I'd appreciate it if you kept your distance." She nodded, her eyes darting nervously. "Of course! I'm sorry." I didn't mean to intrude. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, my mind racing. Was she just an innocent bystander, an admirer of children? Or was she something more sinister, a pawn in Evelyn's twisted game? I didn't know, and that was the most terrifying part of all. The letter was bad enough, a chilling reminder of Evelyn's manipulative influence. But what happened a week later was far worse. It was a direct violation, a brazen act of defiance that shattered the illusion of security I had so desperately tried to create. It involved Max. It was a Saturday afternoon. Lily was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and Max and I were at the park, playing catch. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I allowed myself to relax, to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could actually have a normal life. That's when I saw her, a woman sitting on a bench near the playground, watching Max. She was the same woman I had seen outside Lily's school, the one with the vacant, unsettling expression. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed Max's hand, pulling him close. "Stay with me, buddy," I said, my voice tight. We started walking away towards the parking lot. I could feel the woman's eyes on us, following our every move. As we reached the car, she stood up and started walking towards us. My heart pounded in my chest. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice soft and almost pleading. "I just wanted to talk to you." "Stay away from us," I said, my voice low and menacing. "Please," she said. "I just want to say hello to Max." Max looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. "Daddy, who is that?" "She's no one, Max," I said, quickly unlocking the car. "Get in." As Max climbed into the back seat, the woman reached out and grabbed his arm. "Max," she said, her voice a strange mix of tenderness and desperation. "Mommy misses you very much. She wants you to know that she loves you," I exploded. I shoved the woman away from Max, my anger boiling over. "Get away from my son," I shouted. "Stay away from my family." The woman stumbled backwards, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm just trying to help," she said. "Evelyn wants what's best for her children." "Evelyn doesn't care about her children," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "If she did, she wouldn't have done what she did." I slammed the car door shut, jumped into the driver's seat, and sped out of the parking lot, leaving the woman standing there, alone and defeated. As we drove home, Max was silent, his face pale and drawn. I knew I had to explain what had happened, but I didn't know how. "That woman," I said, my voice soft. She's a friend of your mother's. She was just trying to be nice." Max looked at me, his eyes filled with doubt. "But she looked scary, Daddy," he said. "Why did she say, 'Mommy misses me'?" "Because she does miss you, Max," I said, trying to choose my words carefully. "But Mommy is. She's away right now. She can't be with us." But she still loves you. I hated lying to him, but I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. He was too young to understand the complexities of Evelyn's betrayal. When we got home, I called Greg, my lawyer, again. I told him everything that had happened at the park. He was furious. "This is unacceptable," he said. "We need to get a restraining order against this woman, and we need to find out who she is and how she's connected to Evelyn." He promised to file the paperwork immediately and to contact the authorities. But I knew that wasn't enough. I couldn't rely on the legal system to protect my children. I had to take matters into my own hands. That night, after the kids were asleep, I started digging. I scoured social media, searched online databases, and even hired a private investigator to track down the woman from the park. I was obsessed, driven by a primal need to protect my family. I wouldn't rest until I knew who this woman was and what she wanted. It took a few days, but eventually I found her. Her name was Carol, and she was a former inmate who had served time with Evelyn in prison. They had become friends, and Evelyn had apparently confided in her about her children, her regrets, her desire to be reunited with her family. Carol, it turned out, was easily manipulated, a vulnerable woman who had fallen under Evelyn's spell. She believed Evelyn was innocent, a victim of my abuse, and she was determined to help her reconnect with her children. I confronted Carol, told her the truth about Evelyn, showed her the evidence of her deceit. At first, she refused to believe me. She clung to her belief in Evelyn's innocence, convinced that I was lying. But eventually, the truth sank in. She saw the pain in my eyes, the fear in my voice, the desperation in my attempts to protect my children. She realized that she had been used, manipulated by a master deceiver. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't know. I just wanted to help. I told her to stay away from my family, to never contact us again." She promised she would, but the damage was done. The visitation had shattered my sense of security, proving that Evelyn's reach extended far beyond prison walls. She could still manipulate people, still cause harm, even from behind bars. And that was a terrifying realization. The Carol incident was a wake-up call, a brutal, jarring reminder that Evelyn wasn't just some abstract threat locked away in a prison cell. She was a puppeteer, pulling strings from behind the scenes, using vulnerable people like Carol to inflict pain and sow chaos. I realized I couldn't just sit back and wait for the legal system to protect my family. I couldn't rely on restraining orders and investigations. I had to take control, to proactively eliminate any potential threats, no matter the cost. My lawyer, Greg, warned me against it. "Arthur, you can't start taking the law into your own hands," he said, his voice laced with concern. "You'll end up making things worse. You'll jeopardize your custody of the kids. You'll end up in jail yourself." I knew he was right. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running out of time, that Evelyn was plotting something big, something devastating, and that I had to stop her before it was too late. I started by digging deeper into Evelyn's past. I hired a team of private investigators to track down anyone who had ever been close to her, anyone who might be susceptible to her influence. I wanted to know everything about her network, her allies, her enemies. I became obsessed, consumed by a burning need to understand her, to anticipate her every move. I spent hours poring over documents, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing data. I was turning into the very thing I hated, a paranoid, controlling zealot. One name kept coming up: Eleanor. Eleanor was Evelyn's older sister, a troubled woman with a long history of addiction and mental illness. She had always been fiercely protective of Evelyn, often defending her against criticism and dismissing her flaws. I learned that Eleanor had recently been released from a psychiatric hospital and was living in a halfway house in a neighboring state. She was estranged from her family, struggling to stay sober, and desperately lonely. My instincts told me that Eleanor was a potential threat. She was vulnerable, easily manipulated, and fiercely loyal to Evelyn. She was the perfect pawn. I decided to pay her a visit. I drove to the halfway house, a dilapidated building in a rundown neighborhood. I found Eleanor sitting on the front porch, smoking a cigarette. She was thin and gaunt, with tired eyes and a haunted expression. "Eleanor?" I asked, approaching her cautiously. She looked up at me, her eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" "My name is Arthur," I said. "I'm Evelyn's ex-husband." Her face hardened. "What do you want?" "I want to talk to you about Evelyn," I said. "I don't want to talk about her," she said, turning away. "Please, Eleanor," I said. "This is important. It's about my children." She hesitated, then sighed. "Fine," she said, "but make it quick." I sat down beside her and started to tell her my story. I told her about Evelyn's infidelity, her false accusations, her attempts to destroy my life. I told her about the pain she had inflicted on my children. At first, Eleanor refused to believe me. She defended Evelyn, claiming she was a good person who had simply made a mistake. But as I continued to talk, as I showed her the evidence of Evelyn's deceit, her resistance began to crumble. She saw the truth in my eyes, the pain in my voice. She realized that Evelyn had betrayed her too. "I can't believe she would do this," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "I always thought she was better than this." "She's not," I said. "She's a monster." "What do you want me to do?" Eleanor asked. "I want you to help me," I said. "I want you to tell me everything you know about Evelyn's plans." Eleanor hesitated. "I don't know anything about her plans," she said. "We haven't spoken in months." "I don't believe you," I said, my voice hardening. "I think you're lying to me." I could see the fear in her eyes. She was hiding something. "If you don't tell me the truth," I said, "I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to tell them about your criminal record, your drug use, your mental illness. I'm going to make sure you end up back in prison, or worse." It was a cruel and heartless threat, but I didn't care. I was desperate. Eleanor broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Okay, she said. "I'll tell you everything. Just please don't hurt me." She told me that Evelyn had contacted her a few weeks earlier, begging her to help. Evelyn had claimed that I was keeping her children away from her, and that she needed Eleanor to act as her messenger, to deliver letters and messages to Lily and Max. Eleanor had initially refused, but Evelyn had been persistent, playing on her guilt and her loyalty. Eventually, Eleanor had agreed to help, driven by a misguided desire to reunite her sister with her children. "I didn't know what she was really planning," Eleanor said. "I thought I was just helping her. I swear, I didn't believe her. I suspected she knew more than she was letting on." "What else do you know?" I demanded. "Tell me everything." Eleanor hesitated, then took a deep breath. Evelyn said. She said that if she couldn't be with her children, then no one could. She said she would rather see them dead than let them be raised by you. My blood ran cold. Evelyn wanted to kill my children. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I felt sick, dizzy, overwhelmed by a wave of fear and rage. I knew I had to do something. I had to protect my children, no matter what. "I need your help," I said to Eleanor, my voice trembling. "I need you to pretend that you're still helping Evelyn. I need you to feed her false information, to lead her into a trap." Eleanor looked at me, her eyes filled with fear and doubt. "I don't know if I can do that," she said. "She'll see through me. She always does. You have to try," I said. "My children's lives depend on it." I convinced her to cooperate, promising her protection and support in exchange for her help. I knew it was a risky gamble, but I had no other choice. I was descending into a world of paranoia and desperate actions, blurring the lines between protector and vigilante. I was becoming the very thing I had always feared, a monster. But I didn't care. I would do anything to protect my children, even if it meant sacrificing my own soul. The plan was simple, at least on paper. Eleanor, under my careful supervision, would contact Evelyn and feign continued loyalty. She would tell Evelyn that she had found a way to get to Lily and Max, a loophole in the security measures I had put in place. She would propose a meeting, a rendezvous point where Evelyn's accomplice could take custody of the children and spirit them away to safety. Of course, the rendezvous point would be a trap, a carefully orchestrated ambush designed to capture Evelyn's remaining ally and expose her entire network. I worked closely with a team of private security experts, former law enforcement officers who specialized in covert operations. They helped me choose the location, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place where we could control the environment and minimize the risk of collateral damage. They also provided me with the necessary equipment, surveillance cameras, hidden microphones, and a team of armed guards ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. I felt like I was in a movie, a high-stakes thriller where the fate of my children hung in the balance. But this was no movie. This was real life, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. Eleanor was terrified. She was a nervous wreck, constantly second-guessing herself, fearing that Evelyn would see through her deception. I tried to reassure her, to bolster her confidence, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "You can do this, Eleanor," I said, holding her hand. "You're stronger than you think. Just stick to the script, and everything will be okay." She nodded, her lips trembling. "I hope so," she said. "I really hope so." The day of the meeting arrived, a dark and stormy afternoon that mirrored the turmoil in my soul. I spent the morning pacing the floor, checking the equipment, and reviewing the plan. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything other than protecting my children. As the time of the meeting approached, I drove Eleanor to the warehouse. The security team was already in place, hidden in the shadows, waiting for my signal. I parked the car a short distance from the warehouse and walked Eleanor to the entrance. I gave her one last hug, whispered words of encouragement, and watched as she disappeared inside. I sat in the car, my heart pounding in my chest, watching the surveillance monitors. I could see Eleanor inside the warehouse, pacing nervously, waiting for Evelyn's accomplice to arrive. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The tension was unbearable. I could feel the sweat dripping down my back, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Finally, a car pulled up to the warehouse. A figure emerged, a woman dressed in dark clothing, her face hidden beneath a hooded sweatshirt. It was Carol, the woman who had approached Max at the park. I felt a surge of anger and disappointment. I had hoped that Carol was just a misguided pawn, a victim of Evelyn's manipulation. But now, seeing her here, ready to carry out Evelyn's twisted plan, I realized that she was something more. She was a true believer, a fanatic willing to risk everything for her warped ideology. Carol entered the warehouse and approached Eleanor. I could hear their conversation through the hidden microphones. "Are the children here?" Carol asked, her voice tight with anticipation. "Not yet," Eleanor said, her voice trembling. "They're on their way. But you have to promise me you won't hurt them." "I would never hurt them," Carol said. "I'm doing this for their own good. They need to be with their mother." "But Evelyn wants to," Eleanor began, then hesitated. "Evelyn wants what's best for them," Carol said, cutting her off. "She knows that they're not safe with him. He's a monster." I clenched my fists, my anger building. I wanted to burst into the warehouse and confront Carol, to make her pay for her lies and her betrayal. But I knew I had to stay calm, to stick to the plan. Eleanor continued to stall, trying to buy time. But Carol was growing impatient. "Where are they?" she demanded, her voice rising. "I don't have time for this. We need to go." "They're not coming," Eleanor said, her voice barely audible. Carol's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "It's a trap," Eleanor said, her voice shaking. "He knows everything. He's waiting for you." Carol's face contorted with rage. She lunged at Eleanor, grabbing her by the throat. "You betrayed me!" she screamed. "You betrayed Evelyn." I couldn't wait any longer. I gave the signal, and the security team burst into the warehouse. Chaos erupted. The guards wrestled Carol to the ground, while I rushed to Eleanor's side. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. Eleanor nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I'm okay, she said. But I messed up. I told her too much. What do you mean? I asked. I told her about the safe house, Eleanor said, her voice trembling. I told her where you were keeping the children. My blood ran cold. The safe house. I had moved Lily and Max to a secret location, a fortified residence protected by state-of-the-art security systems and a team of armed guards. It was supposed to be impenetrable, but now Carol knew where it was. I had made a terrible mistake. In my desperate attempt to ensnare Evelyn, I had inadvertently put my children in even greater danger. I raced to my car, my mind reeling. I had to get to the safe house, to protect Lily and Max before it was too late. As I sped away from the warehouse, I saw something in my rearview mirror that made my heart stop. Another car speeding towards the safe house, and behind the wheel I saw a face I never expected to see again. It wasn't Evelyn. It was Bianca, Miles's ex-wife. My foot slammed on the accelerator. The engine roared, pushing the car to its absolute limit. All I could see was the image of Bianca's face in the rearview mirror, her eyes filled with a cold, determined fury. Bianca, Miles's ex-wife, the woman who had helped me expose Evelyn and Miles, the woman who had offered me support and friendship. How could she be involved in this? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Had she been working with Evelyn all along? Was the support she had offered a carefully constructed facade, a way to gain my trust and access to my children? I couldn't afford to dwell on the questions. I had to focus on the task at hand, getting to the safe house before Bianca did. I called the security team at the safe house, warning them about the impending threat. Bianca is on her way, I shouted into the phone. She's armed and dangerous. Do not let her inside. The security chief, a grizzled veteran named Hank, assured me that they would be ready. We'll lock down the perimeter, Arthur, he said. She won't get past us, but I wasn't convinced. Bianca was smart, resourceful, and driven. And now, fueled by a burning desire for revenge, she was a force to be reckoned with. The miles blurred by in a frantic rush. I weaved through traffic, ignored speed limits, and prayed that I would arrive in time. As I neared the safe house, I could see the flashing lights of police cars in the distance. It seemed that Greg had alerted the authorities, and they were converging on the scene. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt, just outside the perimeter. I jumped out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest, and ran towards the entrance. The security guards were standing their ground, their weapons drawn, facing off against Bianca, who was standing a short distance away, her face contorted with rage. "Let me through!" she screamed. "I need to see my children." "Stand down, Bianca," Hank said, his voice firm. "You're not authorized to be here. They're my children too," she screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. "I have a right to see them." "They're not your children, Bianca," I said, approaching her cautiously. "They're Evelyn's children, and you have no right to be here." Her eyes locked onto mine, her face contorted with hatred. "You took everything from me, Arthur," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "You destroyed my life. You turned me against my own husband. Now you're going to pay." "I didn't do anything to you, Bianca," I said, trying to reason with her. "Evelyn and Miles did this to you. They manipulated you, just like they manipulated everyone else. Don't you dare speak her name," she screamed. "Evelyn is innocent. She was framed by you and that lying bastard, Miles." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Bianca was still under Evelyn's spell, still convinced of her innocence. "Bianca, you have to listen to me," I said. "Evelyn is not who you think she is. She's a monster. She wants to hurt my children." "That's not true," she screamed. "Evelyn loves those children. She would never hurt them. She told Eleanor she wanted them dead," I said. "She said she would rather see them dead than let them be raised by me." Bianca's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought I had broken through her delusion, but then Her eyes hardened again, and she pulled a gun from her waistband. "I don't believe you," she said, her voice cold and deadly. "And I'm not going to let you hurt her anymore." She raised the gun, aiming it directly at me. "Bianca, don't do this," I shouted. "You're making a mistake." But it was too late. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Just then, a figure burst from the side of the house. It was Lily, running towards us, her face contorted with terror. "Daddy!" she screamed. "Help me!" Bianca hesitated, her eyes widening in surprise. Lily's sudden appearance had thrown her off balance. I seized the opportunity. I lunged forward, tackling Bianca to the ground. The gun went flying from her hand, landing a few feet away. I wrestled her to the ground, pinning her beneath me. "Get off me!" she screamed, struggling against my grip. "I need to save them." "You're not saving anyone, Bianca," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "You're hurting them. You're hurting yourself." The security guards rushed forward, pulling Bianca off me and handcuffing her. She continued to scream and struggle, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. I ran to Lily, scooping her up in my arms. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice filled with, "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice filled with panic as I held Lily close. She clung to me, trembling. "I'm scared, Daddy," she whispered. "I don't understand what's happening." "It's okay, baby," I said, stroking her hair. "It's over now. You're safe." I looked around, making sure Max was safe as well. Hank, the security chief, was leading him towards us, his face etched with relief. As the police took Bianca away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound sadness. Sadness for Bianca, who had been so thoroughly consumed by Evelyn's twisted ideology. Sadness for myself, for all the pain and suffering I had endured. And sadness for my children, who had been forced to witness such horror. In the aftermath of the showdown, the truth about Bianca's involvement slowly emerged. It turned out that Evelyn had been communicating with her through coded letters and secret phone calls, manipulating her into believing that I was the true villain. Evelyn had preyed on Bianca's insecurities, her feelings of inadequacy, and her desire to protect her children. The children she had always longed for but could never have with Miles. She had convinced Bianca that I was a threat to those children, a monster who needed to be stopped at all costs. Bianca, blinded by her devotion to Evelyn, had become a willing accomplice, ready to sacrifice everything for her twisted cause. With Bianca's arrest, Evelyn's network of accomplices finally crumbled. The FBI was able to track down the remaining players, exposing the full extent of her conspiracy. Evelyn was ultimately convicted of multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole. Miles, having cooperated with the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence, received a much lighter punishment. He was released from prison after a few years, a broken man haunted by the guilt of his actions. As for Eleanor, she entered a rehabilitation program and began the long and arduous journey to recovery. With the help of therapy and medication, she was able to overcome her addiction and rebuild her life. She eventually reconciled with her family and found a sense of peace and purpose. The legal battles were finally over, but the emotional scars remained. Lily and Max continued to struggle with the trauma they had experienced. They both suffered from anxiety, nightmares, and a deep-seated fear of abandonment. Dr. Sarah, the child psychologist, worked tirelessly to help them heal. She used a variety of therapeutic techniques to help them process their emotions, cope with their fears, and rebuild their sense of security. Slowly, gradually, they began to make progress. They started to trust me again, to feel safe in their home, and to rediscover the joy in life. I, too, had a long road to recovery. The paranoia and hypervigilance that had consumed me for so long were difficult to shake. I struggled with feelings of guilt and regret, wondering if I could have done things differently, if I could have prevented the tragedy that had befallen my family. I sought therapy myself, and with the help of a skilled therapist, I began to confront my demons and heal my wounds. I learned to forgive myself, to let go of the past, and to focus on the future. Years have passed since those dark days. Lily is now a confident and intelligent young woman, thriving in school and pursuing her passion for science. Max is a kind and compassionate young man with a bright future ahead of him. They still carry the scars of their past, but they have learned to live with them, to use them as a source of strength and resilience. As for me, I have found a sense of peace and purpose in helping other families who have been affected by domestic violence and parental alienation. I continue to run the foundation I started, providing support and resources to those in need. I have even started to think about dating again. The trust issues are still there, but I am slowly opening myself up to the possibility of finding love again. Evelyn remains a presence in our lives, a shadow that lingers in the background, but she no longer has the power to control us, to hurt us, or to define us. I have learned to accept that forgiveness is not always possible, or even necessary. But I have also learned that healing is always possible, that even in the face of unimaginable pain, we can find the strength to move forward, to rebuild our lives, and to create a brighter future for ourselves and our children. The long road ahead is still uncertain, but I am no longer afraid. I have faced my demons, survived the storm, and emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. And that, I believe, is a victory worth celebrating.